Welcome back again, everyone. It's Dina Kalmeta here, and for this broadcast, we're going to talk about something a little different and something I like to share at least a couple times during the year, and that is dreams and visions, most pointedly about the United States' future. We are told in the books of Acts and Joel that in the latter days it shall come to pass, saith God, I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. And on my servants and on my handmaidens I will pour out in those days of my Spirit, and they shall prophesy. So with that said, there are 3 dreams and 1 supernatural vision I'd like to share with you. And I first would like to start with Katie Troutman's dream from the Most Important News. And it goes on to read, about 9 years ago, she dreamt that her husband and her daughter were in her living room when they heard a loud noise. They looked outside and a nuclear explosion had just taken place. They grabbed their 2 dogs and began running to the car. But they looked in the sky to their left, and there was a mushroom cloud. They got in their car and drove to the hospital. And at the hospital, they had showers set up outside the main doors for everybody to wash off before being allowed to go into the hospital. And she woke up showering off the debris. She said that she knew her dreams were from God, and her daughter and her were both having a series of dreams about the end times. Now this next dream comes from Marty Breeden. And he said he saw a multi-stage intercontinental ballistic missile flying over the skies of America's rural country areas. It goes on to read, a little over 4 years ago, Marty Breeden went code blue twice and almost didn't come back. But during that experience, the Lord directly gave him a message. He said, my church does not really believe that I'm coming back soon. And since then, Marty has been shown many things that are going to happen to America. In fact, on March 25th, 2017, he was shown that one day, Russia will attack and nuclear missiles will suddenly hit targets all over the United States. Marty goes on to explain his dream. Early morning on March 25th, 2017, I was given a dream in the middle of the night, which was one of the more frightening dreams I've ever seen. I saw multi-stage intercontinental ballistic missiles flying over the skies of America's rural country areas. It was a clear morning as they flew over a downtown area that was low-traveled and quiet. I saw a white church steeple sticking above the green, very green trees. As this missile began to break up into different stages, with one going to one pre-designated target and another towards another pre-designated target. It was a multi-stage rocket that exploded over the top of different areas in country communities. When I first noticed the church steeple and the green trees around it, I remember thinking it looked kind of plastic and almost not real. But then I was immediately transported to looking above the landscape and standing about the landscape, almost like puppet masters. And there were men discussing these attacks. I saw several world leaders who were very obvious to me, and others were not so much. I definitely saw Putin holding a teaching stick and pointing to different areas on this map that was going to be struck and that were going to be hit. These men were talking about the different megaton bombs that would be used for these sudden strikes. And I kept hearing one of them mention the number 8. I wasn't sure if that was power or locations or even time. But for part of the conversation, they were mentioning that number. As I was allowed to listen in, I heard this nuclear attack was being discussed as a foregone conclusion and not something that was being planned, but going over that which had already been planned. Putin was showing what the effectiveness would be on that morning. I saw life being carried on as normal, with men playing golf and people shopping. It appeared to be a weekend day. And then I saw myself in the role of a police officer, in full uniform and wearing gear that I do not currently have. We were called to attend to needs in an urban area as it seemed all hell was breaking loose. Even now, I can see the smoke and the drug overdoses and people going insane because what had happened. I heard the calls coming in and the police radio that people were dying and fighting and looting. As law enforcement, we knew we were not going to be able to handle the volume of calls that were incoming on this day. There was a knowing among us as we responded that most people were going to be on their own. I saw cars catching on fire alongside the road. People were standing helplessly by their cars, too shocked to even ask for help. And hysteria does not even begin to capture the looks on their faces. When I can hardly stand to look upon the pain anymore, I awoke. But the really fascinating aspect of this dream was the next morning as I was putting on all of my police gear. My wife walked into the room to ask if I had rested and slept well. I told her no, I had not, because I had a very sobering dream about America and nuclear war. Then my wife, who never dreams, said, "Oh my Marty, I too had a dream last night about America being invaded and a coming attack." She went on to accurately describe what she saw, which was very reminiscent of some of the newer, smaller thermonuclear weapons. She described soldiers on American soil that were not Americans. In 25 years of marriage, this has never happened with my wife and I, having the same type and theme of dream on the same night. And just in July this year, Marty was given another dream. And in this dream, he saw Russia making a first strike. He saw bombs coming toward America. And he went on to say that what makes this particular interesting is a good friend of mine, Barbara Parker, sent him a message that morning saying that she too had dreams on the same night about war with Russia and seeing bombs. And then Barbara shared something with Marty that he thought was very profound, and he asked her permission to share. And she said, reality of how we cannot be ready physically. Everything changes at that moment. A state of accomplishing our tasks and plans instantly turns to survival. Marty goes on to state that I think she was spot on. And this is not a call to cause you to fear. It is yet another call to tell you to prepare your hearts spiritually, to prepare logistically as best you can, and leave the rest to God. And lastly, he said, I am receiving an overwhelming amount of private messages from many who are dreaming the exact same thing. So I do not share these things lightly. So with that in mind, I'd like to share another prophecy from somebody different that has stated something very similar. Dmitry Duduman, on April 22nd, 1996, actually had a supernatural encounter. During this encounter, he was shown details regarding the coming war involving the U.S., Russia, and China. And as U.S. relations with both China and Russia continue to deteriorate, we can see the stage being set for the fulfillment of this prophecy. It goes on to read that Brother Duduman prayed one evening and then went to bed. But he was still awake when suddenly he heard a trumpet sound, and a voice cried out to him, saying, "Stand." In his vision, he was in America. He walked out of his home and began to look for the one who had spoken to him. And as he looked, he saw 3 men dressed alike. 2 of the men carried weapons. One of the armed men came to him and said, "I woke you to show you what is to come. Come with me." And he stated that I didn't know where he was taking me, but when we got to a certain place, he said, "Stop here." A pair of binoculars was handed to me, and I was told to look through them. And the man stated, "Stand there, don't move, and look. You will see what they are saying and what they are preparing for America." And as he was looking, he saw a green light. A dark cloud appeared over it. And he saw the president of Russia, and then a short, chubby man, who he said was the president of China, and also 2 others. The last 2 also said where they were from, but he didn't understand. However, he gathered they were part of Russian-controlled territory, and then the men stepped out of the cloud. The Russian president began to speak to the Chinese one. "I will give you the land with all the people, but you must free Taiwan of the Americans. Do not fear. We will attack them from behind." And then a voice stated to him, "Watch where the Russians penetrate America." And he saw 3 words were being written: Alaska, Minnesota, and Florida. Then the man spoke again. "When America goes to war with China, the Russians will strike without warning." And then the other 2 presidents spoke. "We too will fight for you." Each had a place already planned as a point of attack. All of them shook hands and hugged. Then they all signed a contract. One of them said, "We're sure that Korea and Cuba will be on our side too. Without a doubt, together we can destroy America." And then the president of Russia began to speak incessantly. "Why let ourselves be led by the Americans? Why not rule the world ourselves? They have to be kicked out of Europe too. Then I can do as I please with Europe." The man standing behind him then asked, "This is what you saw. They act as friends and say they respect the treaties made together. But everything I have shown you is how it will really happen. You must tell them what is being planned against America. Then when it comes to pass, the people will remember the words the Lord has spoken." And then he asked the man, "Who are you?" And the man said, "I am the protector of America. America's sin has reached God. He will allow this destruction, for he can no longer stand such wickedness. God, however, still has people that worship him with a clean heart, and they do his work. He has prepared a heavenly army to save these people." And then he looked, and a great army, well armed and dressed in white, appeared before him. The man asked, "Do you see that? This army will go to battle to save my chosen ones. Then the difference between godly and the ungodly will be evident." So according to these dreams, visions, and encounters, America will go to war eventually with China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and Cuba. But it seems that Russia will be the one to make the first strike. Now, with all of that said, I have chosen just a few headlines that can pretty much tell us what the political climate is right now with the U.S. and some of these other nations. The Russian president has stated that Russian nuclear potential should be used to ensure country's defense capability. U.S.-Russia nuclear war would kill 34 million people within hours and is increasingly likely. And just last year, Russian state TV was telling its viewers to stockpile supplies and prepare for war. Sweden thinks Russia is preparing for a large-scale war. And here is another one. The US and Russia are stocking up on missiles and nukes for a different kind of war. And here's one about China. Trade wars cause world wars, history shows. And the Chinese president at the end of last year and also during the summer this year, that the military should prepare for war. In January, a senator had stated that the Chinese buildup in the South China Sea was like preparing for World War III. And then, of course, last but not least, the Russian leader said to the Chinese leader, "Together we can rule the world." Now that right there is very similar to Brother Duneman's vision of what Russia said to China. And remember that that vision was given in 1996. So as it stands right now, there is no denying that there is tensions between the United States, Russia, China, Iran, Cuba. I want to also add Venezuela, and the list goes on and on. But in regards to these particular dreams and visions, Russia will be the first one to strike. And there have been many, many other dreams and visions over the years about an invasion into the United States by Russia and China. So whether you believe in visions and dreams or not, if you just take a look at the political climate right now between the United States and all these other nations, it makes you think, could this happen? There is a high probability that it most definitely can happen. As to when this will happen, nobody really knows. But a lot of people are having the same dreams and visions of these events taking place. And we're also told in the Bible, in Matthew 24:6-8, that there will be wars and rumors of wars. And God is the same God, yesterday, today, and forever. If He judged nations in the past for their sins, He's going to do the same thing today. Now, of course, the last thing I want is a war. But if America doesn't repent, then unfortunately, destruction will come. And so that's why it's so important to be prepared. Number one, you want to make sure that you're right with Christ. That comes first. And secondly, you want to make sure you have everything you can possibly need in case disaster were to strike. Because when disaster strikes, you're not going to get any warning. The warnings are coming now. Whether it be a war, an earthquake, whatever the case may be, it's a good idea to be wise and prepare. So with all of that said, please do leave your comments in the comments section. I'd love to get your thoughts. Or maybe some of you out there have had your own dreams and visions. I'm sure everybody would love to hear about it. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and God bless.